The House will come to order. Members will be at their seats. The clerk has opened the roll and you may record your presence. Please rise and give your attention to the House chaplain and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Representative Robinson.
Shall we pray? Gracious and loving God, to you we owe a great debt of gratitude for all you have done for us and for who you are to us. Today we may hear the quote, "Beware of the Ides of March." When we think about the true meaning of an Ide of the month, we are reminded that it was a time in the Roman period where debts were to be paid. Many of us have many debts to be paid. The debt of gratitude for those who have helped us in some way. The debt of appreciation for all that has been given to us. The debt of love that we owe to those who have loved us. And the debt of serving those who have sent us to represent them. Help us this day to be mindful of those to whom we are indebted and to express our gratitude to them. This I pray. Amen.
Have all the members had the opportunity to record their presence? The clerk will close the roll and record the attendance. The Speaker recognizes Representative Clifford and Lewis on a point of personal privilege.
Yeah, get them over here. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today we have some fine young men here with us and a few older ones. Joining Representative Lewis and me are mentors and graduates of the Finney County Real Men, Real Leaders program. Their mission statement is cultivating young men into leaders by influencing positive decision-making. Our mentors here today include former State Representative Ronaldo Mesa, Mr. Jonas Cruz, and Mr. Tim Sperry. Real Men, Real Leaders was founded in Garden City, Finney County, Kansas in 2009 as an after-school program for 5th and 6th grade male students. Through weekly programs, students are exposed to community leaders, role models, and educational and career opportunities. 5th graders complete lessons in 5 core values: leadership, personal management, family, communication, and citizenship.
The 6th grade students are challenged to complete lessons in 4 areas of community service: government, private, public, and social sectors. Real Men, Real Leaders emphasizes servant leadership. To be a true leader, you must first serve others. While learning servant leadership, students volunteer for over 1,000 hours in our community each year. After students complete their programs, their graduation is recognized at an annual banquet where they receive a challenge coin. Graduates of the program joining us today are Joshua Dominguez, Ezequiel Espino, Andrew Jimenez, Santiago Lopez, Aiden Lozano, Javon McDowell, AJ Monzon, Joshua Murillo, Connor Music, Christian Oliveira, Gabriel Ortega, Adriel Sanchez, and Drake Schilling. The program is being expanded to upper grade levels to reinforce the program's values throughout their educational careers. This program is unique to Kansas and should be expanded throughout the state. Please join us in recognizing Real Men, Real Leaders.
Thank you.
Here. Mr. Speaker, I ask that our remarks be spread across the journal.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thanks, guys.
The Speaker recognizes Representative Butler on a point of personal privilege.
Come on up, General. There you go. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This morning, I've been asked to recognize an individual who's worked hard to make Junction City and Geary County a great place to live and raise a family. I've asked the senator from Manhattan and the representative from Junction City, the 65th district, and many of Phyllis's supporters to join us as we recognize her work that she's done. I've known Phyllis for several years and have observed how much she cares for Junction City, Kansas. Phyllis retired from the United States Army after a long, distinguished career that included deployment to Desert Shield, Desert Storm with the 1st Infantry Division. Since retirement, Phyllis has dedicated her time to working tirelessly to make Junction City a better place to live, work, and play, keeping our city clean. Several years ago, Phyllis established a weekly, monthly, and an on-request volunteer cleanup event with an overarching mission to connect Fort Riley soldiers and community members working together to clean up our community, making it more inviting and the best for a first impression. As an author, in 2016, with time on her hands, Phyllis gathered information from 1st Infantry Division soldiers and wrote, "What is Your Big Red One Story?" This book told the stories of 100 men and women who had served with the units in the 1st Infantry Division. The endeavor was completed in time for the 100th birthday of the 1st Infantry Division. Home away from home. Knowing soldiers want a place to connect, Phyllis established the local Adopt a Soldier program in 2017. To date, she has matched over 200 single soldiers with over 75 local host families. Community service. Phyllis refuses to let grass grow under her feet. In 2015, she was elected to serve on the Junction City City Commission. She served from 2015 to 2020, and in 2017, Phyllis was selected to serve as the mayor of Junction City. Currently, Phyllis works as the executive director for the Society of the 1st Infantry Division. She actively engages leadership from both Junction City and Fort Riley, building relationships that will endure time. Phyllis is a shining star in our community and is recognized by many as an unofficial ambassador for Junction City, Kansas. Thank you from the residents of our community, and from the House of Representatives. Would you join me in celebrating Phyllis's hard work this morning? Mr. Speaker, I request my comments be spread across the journal.
Without objection, so ordered. Introduction of bills and concurrent resolutions. The clerk will read.
House Bill number 2459 by the Committee on Appropriations, an act concerning water relating to the Kansas Water Appropriation Act, providing a definition for safe yield, prohibiting the change of the point of diversion of a water right if such change causes the safe yield of the source of water supply to be exceeded.
Introduction of original motions and House resolutions. The clerk will read.
House Resolution number 6015 by Representatives Riley, Tarwater, and others, a resolution commemorating the celebration of St. Patrick's Day.
On H.R. 6015, the Speaker recognizes Representative Riley for a motion to adopt the resolution. And Representative Tarwater.
Thank you, Mr. Pro Tem. We are up here today to have a resolution for St. Patrick's Day, which is this next Friday. And since we are doing perform on Friday, we're sliding it back to here. My understanding is that not everybody was able to wear their green, and I understand there was even a few people, thank you, Representative. There was a few people that were actually going to wear their kilts, so maybe they can wear their kilts tomorrow. I would like my co-sponsor to give a little background of his family, but in addition to that, I would like to also add, and I need to see the representative from Butler County up here, but we have the senator from of the Senate of Ireland sent to us several Irish pins to share with the folks that come up here. And in addition to that, there are some resolutions copies that come from Ireland. And in addition to that, originally he offered to my co-sponsor the ability to go to Ireland and be there for their a presentation, and that was for and that was for like 4-day presentation over there. And so my my good friend down here, since he wasn't able to go, she's going to go to Ireland for that 4 days. So thank you very much for doing the Ireland tour. Appreciate that. So I'm going to start this out with my co-sponsor here, and he's going to talk a little bit about his Irish background and his family.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning. For my grandparents, Tom and Mary Shine, love at first sight was a real thing. Tom met 16-year-old Mary at a party the first time she was allowed out for an evening. He courted her for 2 years in County Kerry, Ireland. He said that he danced her into loving him, and danced they did. They always were hits at parties, and there was always for sure that a dance would break out. Tom moved to America and worked for 2 years in order to save money to bring his sweetheart over. Work was hard, and he was often met with a sign that read, "Irish need not apply." And their accent made him hard to understand. They were eventually married in St. Louis in 1928, and they made it through the lean times because of their solid love for each other and compromise when difficult things came up. Tom and Mary overcame these obstacles, and Tom eventually became a vice president and board member of Manor Banking Company. They had 8 children, and their house was always full of love. Tom was really proud of his Irish heritage. He was a founding member of the Ancient Order of Hibernians in Kansas City and helped start the very first St. Patrick's Day Parade. One year was the Grand Marshal of that parade, and growing up, we always had a float. And I carried that tradition on, and my kids were always on a float as well. The parade is one of the largest parades in the country, and that is where you will find me on Friday.
Yes, and I didn't bring this out, but when the President of the Senate of Ireland decided to send us these pins, he also sent us a newspaper, and I'm going to give my co-sponsor a flag that's back there on my desk from Ireland that flew over the Senate for helping me out with this today. So I'm going to get this started of our proclamation. So whereas on March 17th, during the annual celebration of the Feast of St. Patrick, the patron saint of Ireland, Irish Americans join with people of all other ethnic origins in celebrating St. Patrick and demonstrating a mutual love for Ireland. And whereas we celebrate the establishment of the American Irish State Legislators Caucus, which has the leadership in all 50 states, we applaud its aim of fostering and strengthening the long-standing relationship between the United States and Ireland for the mutual benefit of both countries.
Whereas the Senate of Ireland celebrates its 101st anniversary this year, and be it resolved by the House of Representatives of the state of Kansas that we commemorate the celebration of the Feast of St. Patrick, the patron saint of Ireland. Be it further resolved that we honor the Good Friday Agreement on the 25th anniversary of its ratification as the framework for lasting peace in Northern Ireland, and be it further resolved that the Chief Clerk of the House of Representatives shall send an enrolled copy of this resolution to the Chair of the American Irish State Legislature Caucus, Senator Mark Daly, the 24th Chair of the Senate of Ireland. With that, we would ask that our words be spread across the.
I need a motion, Representative.
And I'll move our motion for a resolution.
You've all heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion carries. Without objection, the words will be spread across the journal. Senate Bill 24 appears on the consent calendar for the first day. Is there objection? Seeing none, it will remain on the consent calendar for the second day. House Bill 2421 appears on the consent calendar for the second day. Is there objection? Seeing none, it will remain on the consent calendar for the third day. Final action on bills and concurrent resolutions, the clerk will read.
Senate Bill number 83 by the Committee on K-12 Education Budget, an act concerning education, making concerning appropriations for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2024 for the State Department of Education, establishing the Sunflower Education Equity Act, providing education savings account for students, establishing the Sunflower Education Equity Scholarship Fund, requiring each school district to provide a salary increase to each licensed teacher in the school district in school year 2023-2024, defining enrollment of small school districts as the highest enrollment of the 4 preceding years under the Kansas School Equity and Enhancement Act.
This constitutes final action on Senate Bill 83. The clerk will open the roll and you may record your vote. Has every member had the opportunity to record their vote? The clerk will close the roll. Seeing 10 hands, the call is in order. Doorman will close the doors. Members will be in their seats. The clerk will call the roll.
Representative Sutton.
Seeing 10 hands, call is still in order. Seeing 10 hands, call is still in order. Seeing 10 hands, the call is still in order. I would like to remind everybody that it is not permitted to take pictures of the board. Representative Jacobs is excused. Seeing 10 hands, call is still in order. Since it's been a little while since we've been on a call of the House, I will let you guys know that you are allowed to be excused to go to the restrooms. However, if people are leaving and not coming back, then that just takes up a slot. And if other people are needing to leave and those slots are filled, you cannot leave until someone comes back from one of those slots. Thank you. Representative Collins votes aye. For an explanation of vote, the speaker recognizes Representative Garber.
Mr. Speaker, House Substitute for Senate Bill 83 affords parents whose financial situation hinders them the freedom to choose a different education path for their children. The statistics clearly show that public schools are not working for many of our Kansas students. This bill seeks to give less affluent families, if they choose to do so, a chance to decide what is best for them. While this bill is not perfect, we should not let perfect be the enemy of good. This is a good bill. I vote yes. Representatives Garber, Riley, and Fairchild.
Representative Pickert is excused. No? All right. Seeing 10 hands, call is still in order. Just as a reminder, pages are not permitted to be on the floor while we're on final action. Seeing 10 hands, call is still in order. 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 Seeing as how no business has happened since the last call be raised and the likely outcome is the same, we will belay that. Well, we will verify that that is the case, and if that is the case, we will proceed forward. Thank you for your point of order, Representative. And I will give you one momentarily. I will give you one momentarily, sir. Thank you for your point of order, Representative. A call be raised has been asked for. Are there 10 hands? There are. The call is still in order. Still in order. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Could we have a report on the effort to locate missing member.
We're still working on that. Thank you, Representative. Representative Howell asked to be excused. For an explanation of vote, Representative Johnson.
As a teacher, I promised other teachers I would support fair raises for teachers and full funding of special ed. This bill fulfills both of those promises and benefits education. I vote yes. Representative Johnson.
Representative Landwehr is excused. Seeing 10 hands, call is still in order. Representative Myers is excused. Representative Barth is excused. Representative Potter Purcell votes aye. Seeing 10 hands, call still in order. Representatives will be in their seats. For an explanation of vote, Speaker recognizes Representative Epley.
Mr. Speaker, we vote no on Senate Bill 83. There simply is not enough accountability of taxpayer dollars for participating parents or guardians in this program. Furthermore, there are no metrics to evaluate student performance as this new method unfolds. Constituent feedback in our districts was a sound rejection of this bill. Rather than a new voucher system, this body should double down on our efforts for early childhood development and education to effectively improve young Kansans' learning in reading, math, and student as a whole. Representatives Epley, Bourgeon, Dodson, Minix, Concanon, Schreiber, and Younger.
Just a reminder, pages are not allowed to be on the floor. Seeing 10 hands, call still in order. Representative Hauser is excused. Representative Parshall is excused. Representative Underhill is excused. Representative Essex votes aye. Not seeing 10 hands, call is raised. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? Representative Jacobs for an explanation.
Mr. Speaker, I vote no on Senate Bill 83. John Adams said, "Always stand on principle, even if you stand alone." I do not trust a government that destroys an institution and creates havoc, then looks for more victims under the guise of fixing the problem that they caused. In this bill, government holds the purse strings, not the parents. This bill does not fix our government schools. This bill is a governmental plan to further institute an educational welfare system.
All members will be in their seats on final action.
The solution to this problem is not more government, but individual morality, responsibility, and for parents to get involved in their children's education and demand accountability. Representative Jacobs.
Further explanation of the votes. Representative Probst for an explanation of vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I vote no on Senate Bill 83. Those of us from rural areas know well the persistent resentment caused by school consolidation. A generation from now, when rural schools are again shuttered, Kansans will look back on this moment and this bill as the beginning of the end, not just for rural schools, but rural Kansas. Our great state is littered with once hopeful towns that lost their schools and suffered a slow death. SB 83 will force school closures in rural Kansas, leading to further depopulation and continued concentration of political and economic power in the urban areas of Kansas.
Further explanation of votes. Representative Silas Miller.
Mr. Speaker, I vote no on Senate Bill 83. It's exceedingly frustrating to have SPED funding and teacher pay raises tied to vouchers. That it's necessary at all tells us enough about this bill. It's unpopular and it's bad policy. I support fully funded public schools for all Kansas kids, first and foremost, and vouchers are a direct attack on classroom funding. I side with the hundreds of Kansans, teachers, students, parents, and more who submitted opposition testimony to Senate Bill 83, and I vote no. Representatives Melton, Weigel, Haskin, Schlingen-Siepen, Osman, and two more.
Further explanation of votes. Representative Hobson for an explanation.
Mr. Speaker, I vote no on Senate Bill 83. My constituents elected me to defend public education, not defund it. A vote for this bill betrays our most fundamental institutions and undermines public education's role as the great equalizer. A child's zip code, religion, sexual orientation, access to a vehicle, or requirement for special attention should not condemn them to a second-class education and less opportunity for success. I refuse to pick winners and losers, and that's what this bill will do. Representative Ruiz, Hoagland, Meyer, Carr, and Hobson.
Further explanation of votes. Representative Miller. Representative Vic Miller.
Mr. Speaker, I vote no on Senate Bill 83. Public dollars belong in public schools, period. Representatives Miller, Alcala, Dennis Miller, Hoy, Haswood, Sawyer Clayton, Stogstall, Boyd, Woodard, Martinez, Amix, and Carlin.
Representative Sawyer.
Mr. Speaker, I vote no on Senate Bill 83. I cannot authorize writing a blank check without any requirement for accountability or oversight, particularly when the money comes straight from our classrooms. We've been unable to study an accurate fiscal note, and that alone is reason to vote no on this bill. I simply cannot think of a more irresponsible way to craft policy. I highly doubt that the members of this body would be so reckless with their own money, so why do it with taxpayers? Representatives Neighbor, Wynn, and Sawyer.
Any further explanation of votes? Representative Sutton votes aye. Any further explanation of votes? Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Seeing none, with 64 having voted in favor and 61 against the passage of Senate Bill 83, the same having received a constitutional majority, the bill is hereby declared passed. The clerk will record the vote. The Speaker recognizes Majority Leader Croft for a motion to resolve into the Committee of the Whole.
Mr. Speaker, I move the House resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for the purposes of considering those items under the heading of general orders.
You've all heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion carries. The Speaker appoints Representative Anderson to chair the Committee of the Whole.
All right. The first item of business is SB 229. For the purpose of carrying SB 229, the chair recognizes Representative Blake Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, body. Mr. Chair, there were committee amendments. I move adoption of the committee report.
You've heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The motion passes and the committee report is adopted.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, body. Over the years, many of us on both sides of the aisle have discussed legislative pay and what it should or should not be. All we have ever done is discuss the issue, but not take any action to address it because the perception that exists out there is that it'll be the death nail in our next election. Some constituents believe we make nearly $200,000. That'd be nice, but that's not the case. But it couldn't be further from the truth. Some members also, when they go home, will get questions from their constituents. Oh, hey, you're back from DC. Or we would receive emails or phone calls of don't vote for Kevin McCarthy for speaker. And so, you know, we receive these types of communications from our constituents, which I think a lot of us have. But one of our functions is to educate our voters on the issues before us, letting them know that we are not Washington, D.C., and explaining why a bill is a positive versus a negative. Outside of business owners in our districts, most of our constituents do not have the authority to increase their pay like we do here. That is why we are establishing an independent citizen commission to study the issue of legislative pay. After they conduct their study, they will craft a compensation package appropriate for future legislators because whatever the commission establishes will not go into effect until after the next election. We are not reinventing the wheel with this legislation. 21 other states have various forms Sorry, somebody walked across the center aisle. Kind of messed me up there. All right, so 21 other states have various forms of this type of independent commission. And thank you. And this will take care of this proposal. This independent citizen commission will have the authority to cut, increase, or hold our compensation the same. The commission will only have the power to make recommendations regarding capers. Only recommendations. This independent citizen commission will meet every 3 to 4 years to produce a compensation package, which will be given to the legislature in December for us to review for a month of review before our legislative session begins. The legislature can reject whatever they produce via concurrent resolution within 30 days of the start of the legislative session. If the legislature does not reject the compensation package after the next election, the new rates will go into effect. There are several things that this bill is not, should you cast an affirmative vote. It is not raising our pay, it is not cutting our pay, and it is not holding our pay the same. It is establishing an independent 9-person citizen commission to look at this issue and ensure that the rate is acceptable for average Kansans to be able to serve. The only thing that should prevent someone from serving in Topeka is the will of the voters, rather than the ability to afford it if they can come here. Mr. Chair, I will stand for questions.
Does any member desire to speak to the bill? Representative Stogsdill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The carrier of the bill did an excellent job of presenting the bill. I feel it's a good bill. I do think that it's an issue that we should address because I would like to see more people in the state of Kansas be able to run for this body, to run in the legislature. And as he said, this is not a, this is strictly to have a commission to look at this whole issue. I will be voting yes on this, but I think everyone has to consider their own district and decide for themselves. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Is there further discussion? The chair recognizes Representative Proctor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in opposition to Senate Bill 229, and I'd like to talk for just a minute about why. You know, our framers very wisely chose for this to be a part-time legislature and require us to go back to our districts and make a living just like all of our constituents do. I think that it's a big part of the reason that this body works so much better than the body in Washington, D.C. does, because we all have skin in the game. We're, you know, from every walk of life. We come here together for a few months. We pass legislation to make our constituents' lives better, and then we go back home. I think that turning this from a public service into a job is a bad move for Kansas and a bad move for Kansans. And so I'll be opposing this legislation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The chair recognizes Representative Howell.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to speak to the body today, just to rise in support of this bill. Last year, as most of you will recall, I served as an interim legislator this past session, and I just wanted to share with you a story of a conversation that I had with a constituent who was very interested in also running to serve as an interim legislator. And this constituent lived in the poorest neighborhood in Sedgwick County. And when we went through the legislative pay and benefits together, there was absolutely no way that she could even come and serve as an interim legislator, even just for one session, because the pay was so bad, there was no way that she could make it work to have the opportunity to come up here and represent one of the lowest income neighborhoods in the entire county. This is supposed to be a citizen legislature. Anybody should be allowed to run, and having at least a basic level of income to make it so that the poorest people can run and have ability to pay their bills and serve, even as a part-time legislator, I think is important. It is important for us to have legislators who are electricians and plumbers and pest control workers or grocery store workers. It doesn't matter. They should have the opportunity to run and be successful and have a voice in this legislature. I know in my many years of my district, my senator is an electrician. He's the only one in the entire legislature, as far as I know. And every year he goes on unemployment at the end of session. Every year. His family sacrifices greatly, and we all sacrifice in many ways. And this job should not be without sacrifices. However, if we want this opportunity to be available to serve our communities, it should be available to the poorest among us and those with low-income communities. Thank you.
The chair recognizes Representative Carmichael.
I apologize for the delay, Mr. Chair. I didn't realize I was this early on the board. My compliments to the Speaker Pro Tem for bringing this legislation. This legislature is a citizen legislature now, and it will always be a citizen legislature. But the problem is citizens cannot afford to serve here. If you are a young person beginning your career or even halfway through your career, you're trying to raise a family, you're paying school tuition, college tuition, all the expenses of life, you can't afford to not have a full-time job. And if you have to be gone between January and May, you can't really have a full-time responsible job. And so the effect of our present scheme is to keep citizens from being able to serve in their legislature. Instead, you end up with old men like me, people who've had a successful career, who've paid off their house, who don't have car payments, and frankly work for themselves so that they can adjust their schedule to be able to serve in the legislature. Now, if I don't want anybody to ever run against me again, one of the best ways I could do that is to make sure we don't pay legislators a living wage. That way, you'll continue to have old men like me serving in your legislature. Now, it's really easy if you're already retired, or if you inherited a lot of money, or if you're drawing a six-figure military pension, to oppose this legislation. But for those of us who want to see our fellow citizens be able to participate in this legislature, you ought to support this bill as I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The chair recognizes Representative Carlin.
Must be lunchtime. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just rise in support of this bill. I'm starting my 21st, or I'm in my 21st year here. Happily, my family could afford to let me come here and support me. And I have enjoyed this work so much. But it is very difficult for other people to give up 4 or 5 months of their job and take a part. A lot of companies will give you a leave to serve, but very few will give you a stipend or a pay. So I really believe this is the right thing. I remember when I was first sitting, one of my first weeks in the legislature, I was sitting by a representative that said, you know, they had 7 kids. They were below the poverty line with this. And that was 20 years ago. So everything has changed. We need to change. We don't need more days in the legislature. Good God, that just give us time to do more problems for the state. We need to do good things for the state, come in and serve our 90 days and go home. And we need to be compensated fairly. And I am strong support of this bill. And I really appreciate the way it's been crafted so that an independent commission can set this up for us. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The chair recognizes Representative Shu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just mostly want to thank the work of the chair and the Speaker Pro Tem, especially, who I know in many ways is in a similar situation as I am on a daily basis. I appreciate the words of the representative from Leavenworth, who is no longer here, but the day that I won this job, I had to quit my previous job, and it was immediate 70% pay cut. And I don't know if you guys know what the job market is like, but not many companies are scrambling to hire somebody who can only work 6 months a year. So we've been able to stitch it together okay. I freelance a couple different jobs, but it is not easy and it's not stable. And every day my wife and I are wondering what happens if those go away. I know many of you enjoy seeing Astra, who's sitting right there, come into committee, but from my perspective, it is not particularly easy to manage a 3.5-year-old's attention for an hour and a half in committee during spring break. And I appreciate all my committee chairs have been more than understanding and more than accommodating for that. But it's difficult during these weeks. And so this bill will certainly help with that. And again, I just want to express appreciation for those who have worked so hard for this. I'm in strong support of this bill. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The chair recognizes Representative Vic Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know that I can say much more than what was just said by the last speaker. It's not easy voting on these kinds of measures. It's not easy standing up here and championing the idea like our Speaker Pro Tem is doing, and I very much want to express my appreciation to the leadership that he's demonstrated on this. Whether you need a raise or not is not at issue. What is at issue is whether those people who are not in a financial situation to run, but who would like to, and who would add dimension to this body, that's who this is directed at. And as my friend from Sedgwick said earlier, those workaday people are the ones that we're missing in terms of adding a true dimension to who we represent. I rise in support of this measure. I have an amendment that will extend this independent commission to the subject of reapportionment as well, but it's not here yet, so he wasn't listening. I do think these independent commissions can be a good thing. I do not want, however, to surrender my obligation to cast a vote to any independent commission. And in the circumstance as drawn up by this legislation, we're not doing that. We retain a responsibility regardless of what the recommendation of the commission is. So I think the approach that's being used here, and it's being used a number of places across the country, and it works very well, is you get someone outside to take a look, make an independent recommendation, and then we, in the final analysis, have to put ourselves on the line. And we are putting ourselves on the line, even if we don't take action. That will say something about our position. But congratulations for whoever it was that crafted this approach. Congratulations to the leadership in this House for bringing it forward. A discussion of the item has been overdue for probably 25 to 30 years. I urge your support. Thank you.
Is there further discussion on the bill? If there is no further discussion, Representative Carpenter, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I echo many of the sentiments and comments of the colleagues that have come up here before me. If you look at the population of this legislature or the people that we have served with in recent years, you'll notice that typically what ends up happening is those who are early in their career or mid-career don't stay with us for very long because they have to make ends meet. They have to make it work for their families. And so I think what this will allow, like everybody else said, is just another dynamic, another aspect of who can come up here to serve with our legislature. And I think that that's going to present a great opportunity. You know, I'm probably recruiting my future primary or general opponent right now. But I would ask all of you to support this legislation. I think it's going to be great for the state of Kansas and great for the legislature here in general. Mr. Chair, I ask that when the body rises and reports that reports House Substitute for Senate Bill 229 favorably for passage.
You've heard the motion by Representative Carpenter to report SB 229 favorably. All of those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion passes. The next item of business is HB 2400. For the purpose of carrying HB 2400, the chair recognizes Representative Tarwater.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Body HB 2400 creates the Kansas Adult Learner Grant Act and Workforce Retention Incentive. There were amendments. I move adoption of the committee report.
You have heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The motion passes and the committee report is adopted. Please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill creates the Adult Learner Grant Act and the Workforce Retention Incentive Tax Credit. Similar to the very successful Kansas Promise Act, this bill targets adult learners that for one reason or another have not finished their post-secondary four-year institution degree but they've started it. There are currently 400,000 Kansas that have started their degree and stopped for one reason or another. This will help them with a little bit of financial support for those that are low and middle income individuals, similar to the Promise Act. Just like the Promise Act, therefore high demand programs with high need and high wages, information technology and security, healthcare and nursing, science, engineering, aerospace, advanced manufacturing. We added education and early childhood education and development, business, accounting, and data analytics. Still can't say that word from this morning. And then it allows an institution to add another field for their area that is high need after they're in the program for 4 years. To be eligible for the grant, a Kansan has to be a Kansas resident, 25 years or older. They have to complete the free application for federal student aid so that we would be last in, and a lot of these candidates will qualify for federal financial aid, and we won't have to give them anything, but it gets them back into the program. They have to be enrolled as a full-time student or a part-time student at an eligible institution. The grant amount would be up to $3,000 per semester, and that would be done on a sliding scale basis. If you are 12 hours or more, you're a full-time student, and you would get the full up to $3,000. If you have down to 6 credit hours, you would get half of that, and it's kind of a sliding scale in between there. Now, we all know that we have an issue with our graduates leaving the state after they graduate. More than half our graduates leave the state. Because we have a hard time keeping people in Kansas, we have established the incentive tax credit system, workforce retention. After graduation from this program and living in Kansas for 2 years and working for 2 years for a Kansas company, each individual would be granted a $1,500 tax credit that's non-transferable and non-refundable. We will have collected more than that before we offer it. They have to have successfully completed their grant-eligible program, and they have to continue to live in Kansas. We did work this bill for quite a while, and we had several amendments during the committee, and we feel like it's a very good bill, and I'll stand for questions at this time.
Does any member desire to speak to the bill? The chair recognizes Representative Fairchild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have an amendment.
The amendment appears short. The clerk will read.
Page 4, line 16, by striking years and inserting year. Also in line 16, by striking 2025 and inserting, and each fiscal year thereafter. In line 18, by striking all after the period, by striking all in lines 19 through 21.
Representative Fairchild, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In this bill, there's initially a cap of $1 million on this program, but then after that, it rises by 150% each year based on the expenditures. And so if there was $1 million worth of expenditures the first year, then the second year, there would be $1.5 million from the SGF allocated to this fund, to this program. And so if you kept meeting that cap every year as far as the expenditures, this program could just rise exponentially without any type of a cap on it. And so this amendment is just try to be fiscally responsible, and this amendment just does away with the 150% growth in the cap every year. And this amendment simply caps the program at $1 million going forward. So if we wanted to revisit it in a few years, if we felt the cap wasn't high enough, then we could just revisit it at a later time. But I think for right now that we should just place a $1 million cap on this program going forward so that we don't see exponential growth in this program, so that we don't just see exponential spending growth. And so I'll stand for questions.
Does any member wish to speak to the amendment? Representative Tarwater.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks for bringing the amendment. Republican caucus this morning, I informed you that there was a limit in this bill of $5 million, and I was incorrect. I was thinking about another bill that we'll probably hear later this session. So we did leave a limit out of this. There should be a limit in this eventually. $1 million is lower than I would like, but I would consider this a friendly amendment because it will give us a position and we can address it in conference. But we do need a limit on this, just like the Promise Act, I think, is $10 million. So thank you.
Any further members wish to speak to the amendment? If there's no further discussion, Representative Fairchild, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move my amendment.
You've heard the motion by Representative Fairchild to amend. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion passes. Representative Tarwater.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Speaking of amendments, I forgot to offer mine the first time. This has a limit of 10, no, I'm just kidding. This is a technical cleanup amendment. Want me to explain it?
The amendment appears short. The clerk will read.
Page 5, line 7, after the semicolon by inserting and. In line 8, after number 2 by inserting a. Also in line 8 by striking and inserting a comma. In line 9, after program by inserting and we are currently employed in the state of Kansas. Also in line 9, after or by inserting be, have. Also on page 5 in line 10 by striking and, by striking all in lines 11 through 13, in line 14 by striking service member, in line 29 by striking a student and inserting an individual, in line 30 by striking all after the.
Representative Tarwater, you may proceed.
Thank you. So we had inadvertently input as a way to get your tax credit. For some reason, it said in there that you have to be fully enrolled, but this is 2 years after you graduated and you're working. So that was a mistake, and we're just taking that out. I'll stand for questions if there are any.
Does any member wish to speak to the amendment? There is no further discussion. Representative Tarwater, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I close.
You've heard the motion by Representative Tarwater to amend. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion passes. And we're back on the bill. Representative Carpenter. Representative Probst.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our chairman did a thorough job explaining the bill and a fine job carrying amendments. This is a good bill. It's one I wish that had been in place when I was 22, 23 and had 2 little kids at home and worked in a machine shop for about 60 hours a week and then cleaned myself up and went to school at night. I think we've had some conversations, I think, and I hope in the future we'll maybe have more conversations about the needs of people who are working and then trying to go to school, because I think there's more we can do. But I think anything that helps working families afford college and advance their career is a good move. And I hope you'll support this bill.
Is there further discussion? There's no further discussion. Representative Tarwater, you may close.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So last summer, I chaired a workforce development interim committee, and because workforce development is the #1 issue in Kansas right now for businesses. The first recommendation that came out of that committee was to help focus these 4,000 Kansans to get a degree, get a better job, and get into the workforce. Mr. Chairman, I move that when the committee rises and reports, it reports HB 2400 favorably for passage as amended.
You've heard the motion by Representative Tarwater to report HB 2400 favorably. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion passes. Next item of business is HB 2422. For the purpose of carrying HB 2422, the chair recognizes Representative Resman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. House Bill 2422 comes out of Federal and State Affairs. It was sponsored by the State Fire Marshal. What the bill would do, it would eliminate statutory requirements for Chief Boiler Inspector and a Deputy Boiler Inspector. The current statutory requirements were implemented in the 1970s and the 1990s and don't allow endorsement. Chief Inspector must also hold a B endorsement, which is a supervisor's endorsement. For a Deputy Chief Inspector, you have to have at least 5 years of experience in HVAC or plumbing fields related to installation or repair of boilers, and not less 2 years of education, training, or work experience. Like every other state agency, the State Fire Marshal is experiencing recruitment and retention issues across many different positions within their agency. The office for the past year has had difficulty filling these boiler positions. There are about a dozen insurance companies as part of their policy services that hold boiler inspections, and both the State Fire Marshal and the insurance companies are competing for the same qualified inspectors. Removing the qualifications would allow the State Fire Marshal to work with the Department of Administration on creating positions that would help create the void that they currently have. The State Fire Marshal could also start an apprentice program with one or more state vocational schools in the HVAC system and to create a entry-level boiler position. There were no committee amendments. The only proponent was the State Fire Marshal himself. There were no proponents, no neutral, and there's no fiscal effect. And with that, I'll stand for questions.
Does any member desire to speak to the bill? The chair recognizes Representative Hoy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The carrier did a great job explaining this bill. I think it makes sense to address these requirements through a job description as opposed to state statute, and I'll be supporting the bill. Thank you.
Is there further discussion? There is no further discussion. Representative Resman, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move when the committee arises and reports, it reports House Bill 2422 favorable for passage.
You've heard the motion by Representative Resman to report HB 2422 favorably. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion passes. Next item of business is HB 2225. For the purpose of carrying HB 2225, the chair recognizes Representative Delperdang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There was one committee amendment to HB 2225, so I move the adoption of the committee report.
You've heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The motion passes and the committee report is adopted.
Good afternoon, body. This bill here will give you all a chance to go back to your districts and tell them that we took a stab at reducing our electric rates. It's known as the Transmission Delivery Charge Bill. It was originally heard in the committee in early February, and we worked it February 21st. After that, we went back and got a lot of parties together, and we hammered out all the issues in this bill. So it is a compromise bill, and it has been agreed to by all the parties. And my hat is off to Evergy and everybody that came together to make this happen over the course of several weeks and seriously, many hours of negotiating for it. Basically, it has two buckets to it. First one is for any federal-related electric charges. It's known as the Southwest Power Pool, and it's regulated under FERC, or the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. Nothing changes on that bucket. That's a federal issue. Bucket number 2 becomes the local KCC oversight. Return on equities under this bill will be reduced from 10.3% currently to 9.3% return on equities under the KCC rules. And in working with Evergy, we are estimating 80% of the projects between 2022 and 2026 will fall under this bucket. Evergy does continue to be able to use the transmission delivery charges for annual increases and decreases as needed. But under the new KCC review process, Evergy will have to submit projects to the KCC before they can be added to any transmission delivery charges. And in a rate case, Evergy will be required to file testimony regarding the regionally competitive rates and how proposed rate increases will impact economic development. That was an element out of a different bill. It was House Bill 2155 that we were able to get added into here. What are the benefits? Initially, day one, we should be seeing $9 million in cost reductions for Evergy customers, for Evergy Central customers, just from moving from the 10.3% return on investments to 9.3% for the local projects. There's also an additional $1.6 million for Evergy Metro. So combined, we're looking at almost $11 million in rate reductions overall. There's also reduced costs for future projects due to the lower returns. We are estimating approximately $2 million per year, which pancakes each year. For instance, year one has a savings of $2 million. Year two also has the same $2 million, so it kind of adds upon itself. There is improved oversight by the KCC to review the projects and determine the scope and the timing, and hopefully slow down some of the spending that we've been seeing in the state. And it provides ongoing conversations about rate competitiveness and the various rate cases. While some might say this is not a big enough savings, the compromise bill is going in the right direction, and it is the first step, and it is providing the right policy. We had testimony from the KCC who proposed the bill, in addition to Kansans for Lower Electric Rates Chamber, the Kansas Chamber, Americans for Prosperity, Kansas Grain and Feed, all supported it and testified, while we also had support from Cuyahoga, the Wichita Chamber, AARP of Kansas, Wichita Public Schools, and Clean Energy Business Council. With that, I will stand for questions.
Does any member desire to speak to the bill? The chair recognizes Representative O'Hobson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The carrier of the bill, who actually be the chair of the committee, did a fine job in explaining the bill. I concur with everything that he said. Just like I briefed my caucus, it is a good bill, and I urge everyone to support it. I want to thank him as well for his leadership on it, as well as the vice chair or the representative from Johnson County. Again, this was a compromise bill. All parties agreed to it. So I urge everyone to support it. Thank you very much.
The chair recognizes Representative Schreiber.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the carrier of the bill did a good job explaining the compromise. I too would like to congratulate those that worked on it and then brought it back for committee review and approval. So I really appreciate their efforts. I did want to point out, because the transmission delivery charge is a volumetric type charge, the more you use, the more savings, so to speak, you would see. On an average, I asked in the committee on of the KCC what was going to be the average residential decrease in the transmission delivery charge, and for Evergy Central, which is the old Westar territory, and it would be about 47 cents a month. For the Evergy Metro, which is the old KC Pinell territory, it'd be about 30 cents a month. But as the carrier said, you know, it's moving in that right direction there. And so I just wanted to point out, to bring a little context to the millions that are out there that are being saved, to what it means for residential customers. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The chair recognizes Representative Carmichael.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am critically aware that the lunch hour is rapidly leaving us and that we did, of course, spend time on a call of the House this morning. I would really like to spend about 10 minutes talking about this today because it's a major accomplishment. Much of the credit goes to the chair of the Energy, Environment, and Utilities, the Energy, Utilities, and Telecommunications Committee. He has worked tirelessly on this bill and this concept. When we came here in January, I did not think that we would make any progress this session on retail electric rates. And my chairman has proven me wrong, and my compliments to him for his patience, his good judgment, and his occasional ability to twist an arm a little bit when necessary. This is good legislation, but it is in fact only a start. We can expect that electric rates in Kansas will continue to increase. They're going to increase in part because energy costs overall, the energy that is used to make the electricity overall, those prices are increasing. We are fortunate that we have renewable generating capacity, i.e. wind power and hopefully soon solar power. But the transition to those new forms of energy has its own costs. Frankly, it requires building additional lines to carry the current generated by those facilities, typically to where the load is in the cities where the industries are. So the fact of the matter is, the days of cheap, free energy are probably gone. I don't think you're going to see gasoline at 20 cents a gallon anymore. But there are steps that we can be taking, and this is the first of one of those steps. Additional steps which we need to look at, and by the way, I want to give my thanks to the KCC. I had hard words for them early in the session as well. They brought this idea and pointed out to us that this is an area where they didn't have the power to regulate, and one of the areas where our electric bill was going up the fastest. But for their efforts, we wouldn't be here. So I have to eat some of the words that I said earlier this year in committee, and I'm glad to do it. I enjoy eating my words. But the fact of the matter is, there may need still yet to be structural changes to the KCC itself. We did not work a particular bill this year that would have provided for election of the, or we worked it, but it did not come out of committee, that would provide for election of those KCC members. There are alternative ways to reform the KCC, and in particular, perhaps expanding the number of commissioners would be a good start. In addition, there are certain presumptions in a utilities law that say that expansion by the electric company is presumed to be reasonable and necessary unless somebody else proves that they didn't need to do the expansion. It ought to be the other way around. It ought to be that the electric company has to prove that they spent the money in a reasonable and prudent way to benefit ratepayers. Because the final thing I want to leave you with is to understand that the way utilities law works is rates are not set based on the profitability of the company. Rates are set based on the return on the shareholders' investment in the company. And so as a result, the more money Evergy or other for-profit electric companies spend on building new transmission lines, the higher the gross rate, the gross amount of return is for their shareholders. The way they make money is not by selling electricity anymore. The way they make money is by building new capacity, whether it's needed or not, improving old transmission facilities, many of which do in fact need rehabilitation and expenditure, and then making a return on that investment of capital for their shareholders. That's a very different model than a business that you and I might operate. And that's why we need to be careful to make sure that for-profit utilities have justification for capital expenditures. And what's happening right now is that Evergy is seemingly doubling their intended capital expenditures virtually year after year, and that has been in direct response to pressure from dissident investors in the company who demanded an increased rate of return. Those folks are now gone from the management, or not gone from the management, but they've divested themselves of their interest in the company. And my hope is that Evergy's reluctant agreement to this bill represents a change of attitude on their part. And if that's the case, I look forward to working with my friends there because relations have been tense of late. Thank you for your patience with my remarks. I urge your support for HB 2225. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The chair recognizes Representative Berquist.
I appreciate the process. Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the process of this body. I appreciate the process of committee work. Appreciate the work, in this case, of our chairman and the House. And after that, the collaboration, the negotiation, the concessions made by all parties involved. And all parties were brought into this process by their own wanting to come up with the best solution for their own entities. Those entities came together, those companies came together, and now it's simply our part of that whole process of legislation to simply vote. And because of that, I urge your vote affirmative for House Bill 2225 today. Thank you.
Is there further discussion on the bill? There's no further discussion. Representative Delperdang, you may close.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to the testimony of everyone. There was a lot of work that did go into this, and I'm quite pleased with what came out of it, and hopefully we'll see some more coming in the future. But in the meantime, Mr. Chair, I move that when the committee rises and reports, it report House Bill 2225 favorably for passage.
You've heard the motion by Representative Delperdang to report HB 2225 favorably. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion passes. Next item of business is HB 2331. For the purpose of carrying HB 2331, the chair recognizes Representative Blex.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There were no committee amendments. House Bill 2331 it come to us from the House Agricultural and Natural Resources Committee. And what this would do would designate Lehigh, Portland Trails in Allen County, right south of the city of Iola, as the Lehigh Portland State Park. The new park would be part of the Wildlife and Parks and basically has a lot of history. It was originally in the 1900s a cement quarry where they actually quarried out rock to make cement. Have a lot of history in that area of southeast Kansas cement plants. And it's about 360 acres. And the current old quarry pit is about 138 acres. And the kind of neat thing about it, it has about 14.5 miles of already developed trails. And this come to us in the Ag Committee, and we started asking quite a few questions. We was concerned about hazardous materials. We was concerned about an environmental assessment, possibly visitation. The committee felt like they didn't have enough information, so a second meeting was held as more of an informational type thing to address some of those concerns. And it kind of come on us fast. And what we found out that EPA had done an extensive, almost a 4,000-page document of evaluation of area cement plants in the area and did not find anything significant. Kansas Department of Health actually come in and done a lot of water testing and found out there was nothing major, no detectable issues that we might have thought. And keep in mind, this Lehigh actually acquired this in about 1917, and the cement plant was closed in 1971. So we got over 50 years that this thing has not been in operation. And Iola Industries owns it, and it's a for-profit industrial group that actually tries to bring businesses into town. And they basically, at that time, the mayor of Iola said it would fit great with our existing city parks, but it's almost too big for us. And his comment, to quote him, it's too big for us to handle with current city resources, but it's also too good to die. So I think they indicated that it wasn't important for recreation. And since that time, a trails group has actually developed a lot of trails. I hadn't been on it for 25 years. And last Sunday, I took the liberty of driving over there and touring it, and I was really pleasantly surprised at how much development they had. They tie in with the Sunflower Rails Trail, the Prairie Spirit Rail Trail, old abandoned railroad right-of-ways, and have a lot of miles there. And so it's really kind of a neat area. And I think the thing that impresses me the most is the local community has been very engaged. And kind of when you come in and establish a state park, which will be, may I remind you, the state parks are fee funded. There will not be any state general fund in that. So right now, they're wanting to do this, and it come to us kind of quick. And there was a lot of concern that why it was so quick. And basically, some of the issues were that there's a grant out there that would actually pay for 100%. There would not even be a match. And that's critical because the normal grant process through the rails to trails about an 80-20, and the land and water conservation is about a 50-50 match. So they kind of pushed it. And then I think because the Elks Club had a lease on it for so long, they had kind of their own private recreation area and fishing area, and there was a little bit of reluctance in the community. So when we had the second meeting, it was over 100 proponents to the first meeting, and a lot of written as well as oral. And then we had the second meeting, there ended up being 3 private citizens. 2 of those are currently Elks members, and they were concerned that, they had been forced out of it and basically did not like that. So really, it's kind of got a lot of support. And the fiscal note on the thing will be about $50,000 from the park fee fund. And there'll be surveying and development and a master plan, and then they will apply for the grant. And I understand they've already applied for the grant. So with that, I will kind of stand for any questions. We got a lot of public support on it. The initial approach lacked a little bit to be desired, but after hearing the testimony, there's a lot of passion there, so I'll stand for any questions, Mr. Chair.
Does any member desire to speak to the bill? The chair recognizes Representative Corbett.
Thank you, everybody. One thing you want to think about this is if you have 300 and some acres in one of the prime places in Kansas and you want to make some money, why wouldn't they just sell it and make a couple of million? If everything's as clean as they say it is, it'd make more money for Iola than a state park. So I've got an amendment.
The amendment appears short. The clerk will read.
Page 2, following line 9 by inserting F, notwithstanding any other provision of law. Number 1, Lehigh Portland State Park in Allen County shall not be open to the public as a state park until the title of each property parcel within the boundaries of such state park has been secured by the state of Kansas. Number 2, any and all costs of cleaning all solid and hazardous waste from the Lehigh Portland State Park in Allen County shall be charged equally against the Department of Health and Environment, the Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks, and the Department of Commerce. On page 1 in the title in line 2 after the semicolon by inserting, requiring the state of Kansas to secure the title of each property parcel within the boundaries of such state park and certain departments to pay the costs of cleaning all solid and hazardous waste from such state park.
Representative Corbett, you may proceed.
Thank you. You know, from about 50 feet, this looks like a pretty cool place. But you've got to realize there's over 100 years worth of trash and debris. There's even a building there so high you could land a helicopter on the roof in the middle of the lake. So I just want to make sure that if we get into this, is what this amendment does. And if the waste and the hazardous stuff turns out to be a big deal, that those three branches, the Commerce and Wildlife and Parks and KDG, that money comes out of their budget. And just a backup, maybe save Kansas some money. Thank you.
Does any member wish to speak to the amendment? Representative Blex.
Thank the representative for bringing this amendment. However, I can't see it's really essential. The first part of that would be that we have to have a clear title to each property partial. And that's part of the initial acquisition process that Wildlife and Parks does. They're not going to take an acquisition until they actually have a clear title. So I really don't necessarily see the value of that. And also there's been a strong public support within the already developed trails that the community wants to remain those open. So I would say that that may be a little bit of problem with locals if we run into a snag, but the department's not going to take title of it. And then if we look at the cost of cleaning up the all solid and hazardous waste from Lehigh, Portland, and Allen County shall be charged equally against the Department of Health and Environment. That's not all necessarily a bad thing, and certainly the department would love to see some cost share if there is some issues there. There was prior an old trap shooting range that may have some lead there, but the Wildlife and Parks is very adept at managing those. They do some reclaiming of the lead and they deal with that hazardous stuff. And so they're probably okay on it. And I'm not so sure the stuff that's under the water has been there for 50 years. All the tests indicate the water is clean And ironically, some of that stuff, and we've heard maybe complaints about rock piles and maybe an old piece of machinery. That's actually pretty good fish habitat. A lot of us put cedar trees and hedge trees in there for fish. So I'm not so concerned this is it. I don't necessarily consider it unfriendly, but I would hate to see if we had one little partial over in the corner that we couldn't get it, we had a little time delay on a clear title, that the entire area, particularly that area that's already developed, widely used with mountain bikes and rails to trail, I'd kind of hate to see that go. So I guess I'll leave it up to the will of the body. I appreciate the good representative bringing this to attention, and let you guys decide.
Does any other member wish to speak to the amendment? There's no further discussion. Representative Corbett, you may close.
Thank you, Chair. If everything is as clean as it's been told to you, this will not impede anything. But if it's not, this is a good backup. So I ask you to support the amendment, and I hope the lake goes good, but if they get a snag, we've got an out. Thank you.
You've heard the motion by Representative Corbett to amend. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The noes appear to have it. The noes do have it. Division. All right, a division has been called. The clerk will open the roll and you may vote. The clerk will close the roll and take the tally. Having voted in favor and 81 against, the motion fails. We're back on the bill. The chair recognizes Representative Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When there are two people with similar sounding names wanting to speak, it might cause some confusion. But anyway, I just want to speak in favor of this bill. It would really be a great asset for Allen County. I no longer represent part of Allen County because of redistricting, but I've still had a lot of input on this, a lot of people in favor of it. A few not so much in favor, but it is just a really good project, and I think it'll really enhance the lives of many people in Southeast Kansas. And just want to mention there's a really good YouTube video about it, and I don't know the exact name of it right now, but it'd be a good thing if you're interested to Google it and find the video, because it's just really interesting. Thank you.
The chair recognizes Representative Carlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I know everybody's listening so carefully that they're going to know the difference between Carlin and Collins, but I couldn't tell. So thank you. I rise in support of the bill. I was raised near there, and I used to spend a lot of time with my aunt and uncle at the Elks Lake, we called it, and fishing and picnics, and it brought back a lot of memories. And I feel like the community there is going to use this lake, continue to use it, and it's going to be a great draw for them. And also, some of our members have said they've been on the trails and how beautiful they are. So I think it's one of those parks that's pretty much ready for the state to take ownership and make some improvements on and go forward. So thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in support.
The chair recognizes Representative Schlingen-Siepen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Body, it is a rare thing to sit in a committee like the Ag Committee and get to learn so many things about what people do in this state. It's a special privilege for me, a city boy from Topeka, to be able to do that. This particular bill makes your heart sing. It really does. To hear what the community has done, to see what Kansas can do with this particular gem, to see the benefits for rural Kansas, to take a piece of natural land and turn it into an economic benefit, not only for the state, but for the community. That's a win-win for everybody in this state. Bicyclists and hikers like myself, we love Kansas trail systems, and we spend a lot of money along those trail systems. And for a lot of small towns, this is a big deal. It will bring tourism to our state, and it will continue to increase the opportunities that the trail system provides. So I urge your support for this. This is a really good bill. Thank you.
There further discussion on the bill? There's no further discussion. Representative Blex, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, body, for the discussion. And I guess I will reaffirm some points that whenever you get a community engaged as well as they are, and it's going to succeed. They've already developed. I told the secretary, this is almost like Wildlife and Parks buying into an established business. You got to work hard, not because they've got half of it done on the trail, particularly on the trails. Super, we put a lot of money to mental health. Certainly this would help that. They're estimating 200,000 visitors per year at an economic return of 7.5 million a year. So that was one of the reasons why Iola Industries has preserved this for public recreation all those years. So I think with the tie-in of the Prairie Spirit and the Flint Hills Trail, and certainly the addition of the lake. One thing I forgot to mention, it's got about a 250-foot cave that you can actually locally called John Brown's Cave, that has an entrance. You can actually go in it. And certainly the water is super clear. Scuba diving, we look at some of those hazards that we may say is a hazard, but sometimes no junk machinery, people in the ocean dive and do scuba diving to explore shipwrecks. This is kind of adds to the flavor there, got a lot of fossil, and I certainly appreciate your support for this, and I would ask when the committee rises and report, they report House Bill 2331 favorably for passage.
You've heard the motion by Representative Blex to report HB 2331 favorably. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion passes. This concludes our general orders. The chair recognizes the majority leader.
Mr. Chair, I move we rise and report.
You've heard the motion to rise and report. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes.
The clerk will read the committee report.
Mr. Speaker, your committee of the whole recommends House substitute for Senate Bill 229, House Bill 2422, and 2331 be passed. House Bills 2400 and 2225 be passed as amended.
The Speaker recognizes Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the adoption of the committee of the whole report.
You've heard the motion to adopt the committee report. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The committee report is adopted. Reports of standing committees. The clerk will read.
Committee on Taxation recommends House Bill 2254 be amended. The bill be passed as amended. Committee on Judiciary recommends Senate Bill 243 be amended and the bill be passed as amended. Reports of Committee on K-12 Education Budget recommends Senate Bill 113 be amended by substituting a new bill to be designated as House Substitute for Senate Bill 113 as follows. An act concerning education, making concerning appropriations for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2023 through 2025 for the State Department of Education, establishing the Mental Health Intervention Team Program and state statute, providing incentives for coordination between school districts and community mental health centers, creating the Mental Health Intervention Team Program Fund in each school district, authorizing certain students to participate in activities that are regulated by the Kansas State High School Activities Association, authorizing certain non-public school students who enroll part-time in a school district to participate in non-public school activities, and the substitute bill be passed. Committee on Elections recommends House Bill 2391 be amended and further amended by substituting with a new bill to be designated as substitute for House Bill number 2391 as follows. An act concerning campaign finance relating to Governmental Ethics Commission, establishing a 5-year statute of limitation for complaints, modifying the commission's subpoena powers, allowing respondents to have a hearing transferred before a presiding officer under the Kansas Administrative Procedure Act, and the substitute bill be passed. Committee on Elections recommends Senate Bill 209 be amended. The bill be passed as amended. Committee on Elections recommends Senate Bill 221 be amended, and the bill be passed as amended.
Are there announcements? The Speaker recognizes Representative Riley. This is Representative Stogsdill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. Democrats will have agenda tomorrow morning at 8:30. Tomorrow morning at 8:30, 152 South. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Speaker recognizes Representative Titus.
Freshman Republican will meet at 7 a.m. tomorrow morning.
Are there any further announcements? Seeing none, the Speaker recognizes the Majority Leader for a motion to adjourn.
Republicans, we will calendar tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Again, 8 a.m. Mr. Speaker, I move the House adjourn until Thursday, March 16th at 11 a.m.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it. We are adjourned.
To save audio highlights,